Hey, Mars students, I'm going to talk to you about how to do the Google Sheet activity standard deviation. All right. And so I'm going to follow the instructions here. These instructions are for the women's versus men's weekly earnings. So our job is to figure out the standard deviation. I'm going to take you through all the steps and we'll start with finding the mean. Okay. Pretty easy to do. Just remember that the mean is the average of all the numbers. What we're going to do is average all the men's weekly earnings and put the answer right down here. So first, click in cell A13, and here's how we find the mean. Come up to this box, says functions, click on that. And remember that the mean is the average. So you want to click average. All right, and so inside the parentheses, what we want to do is average all the numbers up above. And we don't use the actual numbers, we use the cell numbers. So the quickest way to put all the cell numbers inside is to click on the first one, and I'm holding my mouse down. You're going to want to hold your touchpad and drag it all the way down to cell A11. And so the first number that we had was in cell A2. See, A2, and the last number was cell A11. And this gathers all the numbers together. And when we hit enter on the keyboard, you get your answer. And so what that did was add up all 10 numbers and take the answer and divide it by 10. And this is what we got. And so we'll do the same thing for the women's weekly earnings. And click in cell C13, come up to functions, click on that. Remember, it's the average. And we'll do the same thing and highlight all the numbers from C2 down to C11. Hit enter, and that is the mean for the women's weekly earnings, okay? So now it's on to calculating the standard deviation, and we have to go through 4 steps. The first one is to subtract each value of the men's weekly earnings minus the mean. Now we're only going to work on the men's weekly earnings. We're not going to do the women's because I have a very quick shortcut I want to show you after we do all the calculations for the men's standard deviation. First, what we do is we're going to be taking each number from the men's weekly earnings and subtracting the mean. Here's how we do it. Click in cell E2, come up to functions. You want to click on that, come down to operator, okay? And once you get to operator, you're going to see another list appear. Come up to minus, because we want to do subtraction here. And so first thing we'll do is subtract 1,662. So just click cell A2 and then hit comma. So make sure you have a comma right there, and that's on your keyboard. And then click on cell A13. All right, so what that's going to do is take 1662 and subtract the mean of 1,268.3, okay? And that right there is how you calculate or do subtraction. And then hit enter, and you get this answer here, okay? And I'm going to do the same thing for the next number down, okay? But first, come to functions, come to operator, come up to minus. This time you're going to click cell A3, then hit the comma, and then click cell A13 for the mean and hit enter, okay? And you keep doing this all the way down, okay? Again, go to functions, come down to operator, come up to minus. And you should see equals minus, and then click the cell that the next number is in, and then hit comma, and then click on the mean and hit enter, okay? And that's how you're going to do that. Okay, so I just paused the recording and finished up this list. Notice that I click on a cell and I see my answer, but the formulas are going to appear up here. And again, I click on one, and I'm going to be looking in your cells to be sure that you typed the formula. That's what I'm going to be grading you all on. Be sure your formulas are good, okay? Don't just type the numbers in there. You need the formulas in there too, okay? All the way down. And you'll notice that some of these numbers turned out to be negative, all right? That's because you subtracted this mean from a number up here that was smaller than the mean. All right. Okay, so on to the next part. Square differences. What we want to do with square differences is to take each difference. Now, the reason why we call them differences is that's what we call an answer to subtraction. When we find the difference between two numbers, we subtract. So that's why we call these numbers differences. All right. But now we're going to square them. And that means that we're going to raise them to the second power. We're going to multiply these numbers times themselves. And here's how we do that. Click in cell F2 and come up to functions. And this time you're going to come down to math. Okay, come to math. And we want to find the word power. Okay, because that means we're going to raise these numbers to the second power. And so you'll see equals power. Inside the parentheses, you can click the cell that has the number in it. And then you want to put comma. And then you want to put 2 because you're going to be raising the number in cell E2 to the second power. What that really means is you're going to be doing 393.7 times itself. Once you see this, you can hit enter. And there's your answer. And I'll do it again for the next few. All right, again, you want to come up to functions. You want to come down to math. You're going to come up to power. And then we're going to click the cell that the number we want to raise to the second power, E3, comma, and then 2. That means we're going to raise the number in cell E3 to the second power. Hit enter, and you should get that right there. Let's do one more. Hit functions, come down to math, come to power. I'm going to click the number, type comma, and then hit 2, and then enter. And that's how you raise these numbers to the second power, okay? Okay, when you're done with all these square differences, you should get these numbers right here, okay? And again, if you click on each number, you're gonna see the formula up here, okay? I want you to make sure that you use that formula. That's what I'm grading you on. And what we did was take each difference and square it. You'll notice that the negative numbers become positive because when you multiply a negative number times itself, a negative times a negative is a positive, okay? And that's all the square differences. All right. So we've gone through all these parts. Let's move down to the next one. Now we find the mean of all the square differences, and this won't take long at all. What we're doing is averaging all these numbers up above, right? These numbers are pretty big, but we're going to average them, all right? And so click now in F13 right here, and we'll find the mean of the square differences. Again, the mean is the same as the average. So you want to do average here. Click on the first number, drag it all the way down to the last number, and you'll see that you've highlighted cells F2 through F11. Hit enter, and there is your mean of square differences right there. You should get 102,865.01. And we're almost done with this part. The last thing we do to find the standard deviation is to square root the mean of square differences. So here's how you do that. All right. To find a square root, we're going to click up on functions, and we're going to come down to math. Now we're looking for this symbol right here, SQRT. Click on SQRT, and we're just going to find the square root of this number. So click on cell F13 and hit enter. And there's your final answer right there, 320.7257551. I'm going to highlight this just so I can show you what's about to happen. Okay, all of that work gave us the standard deviation. Now let me show you the very cool shortcut for finding the standard deviation right away. Next part you want to do, and we're going to check our answer here. Click in cell A14, and we can find the standard deviation for these numbers right away. Here's how it works. Come back up to functions. And this time you're looking for statistical, okay? Everybody finds statistical, and you get a huge list of numbers. They're all in alphabetical order. But we want to use this one right here. It's stdev.p, because what we're doing is finding the standard deviation for this entire population of numbers. And so all we do is highlight these the same way we did it with the mean, only this is standard deviation. So make sure you see stdev.p, A2 through A11. Watch what happens when we hit enter. We get the exact same number that we calculated before. Much quicker shortcut. So now I'm going to highlight that. All right. And we're going to label that as the standard deviation. You can do it like this if you want, STDEV, just so you know that that's the standard deviation. We'll do the same thing for the women's weekly earnings now, okay? So again, we're going to come up to functions, come down to statistical, come over to stdev.p, highlight C2 through C11, and then hit enter. And that is the standard deviation for the women's weekly earnings. Now, you don't have to highlight them with colors if you don't want to, that's fine. But please label them as standard deviations, okay? And that's how you do standard deviation for two sets of data.